I recently did a community poll, asking you guys what campaign I should do a video on next, and Dark Carnival won in an absolute landslide. Honestly, I'm surprised it took me this long to get to this campaign. Sure, it may not be as dark or as tragic as the Parish or the Sacrifice, but the carnival setting and dynamic level design is what makes this campaign so great. Valve took full advantage of the unique setting of this campaign by giving us plenty of small Easter eggs and, of course, hilarious interactions between the survivors. You guys know the drill at this point, so without wasting any more time, let's break down the story behind Dark Carnival. After the ending of the passing, the crew continues their trip to New Orleans, but during the drive they come across a massive traffic jam.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, guys, but unless Ellis knows how to build a monster truck, we ain't driving through this.
Sorry, folks. This car is capable of miracles, but it can't drive over 20 miles of parked cars. I think we're walking.
After walking for a few seconds, the survivors see a sign displaying the Whispering Oaks amusement park, and usually Coach and Nick will have an exchange that goes like this.
Hey, Whispering Oaks! Shit, I used to go there when I was a kid!
Oh, good. Now we can die there as adults.
After walking a little further, the survivors take note at just how long the traffic jam goes on for, and sometimes you'll hear this dialogue exchange between the survivors.
Wow, look at all these cars. Poor dumb bastards, they thought they could escape on foot. Wait, that's what we're doing.
Well, maybe they left them when they got rescued.
That's one theory.
Coach is optimistic that the survivors stuck in the traffic jam were rescued. However, if you walk a little further up the road, you find a military jeep. And in front of the military jeep is a massive pile of bodies. These bodies could be infected or survivors. Once again, it's not made very clear. However, considering what the military was doing in New Orleans, mowing down a group of civilians isn't exactly a far-fetched conclusion. Perhaps this is a reach, but I do find it odd that this many bodies are placed this close to the one military vehicle closest to the highway. It's some food for thought, that's for sure. Speaking of horrible things done by the military, let's move on to the motel. Looks like a standard motel at first, until you check out the pool, where you find a pile of charred bodies and gas tanks scattered around nearby. These could be infected corpses, but keep in mind that these could also be carriers. Remember, in the Sacrifice comic, when the crew arrives at Fort Millhaven, we get a look at the military's exact method for dealing with infected corpses. The motel is also fenced off, so it's likely the military used this as a temporary outpost. And considering its close proximity to the highway, they likely took in some survivors. It's likely that a few of those survivors could be carriers, and the military had to deal with them the only way they knew how. Again, I don't know this for sure, they could be carriers or normal zombies, either is entirely possible. But remember, we've seen the military do this before. Now that we got all that out of the way, let's move on to Chapter 2. Before you even leave the safe room, the survivors will have an exchange talking about the Midnight Riders, a rock band that's supposed to be playing at the carnival. Ellis and Coach then bond over their shared love of the Midnight Riders.
Hey, the Midnight Riders! I used to love that band. Best pyrotechnics in the business.
Yeah, I saw him in 07, front row center. Lost my eyebrows.
About halfway through Chapter 2, the survivors eventually arrive at Kittyland, and Ellis could not be happier.
Holy shit, guys! Kittyland! Man, would you look at all these rides? And no lines! Wish we weren't in such a hurry.
Sometimes it feels like we're babysitting, doesn't it?
He's like a 5-year-old with guns and a comprehensive grasp of every swear word in the English language.
He is making the best of a bad situation. Ah, to hell with it. Woo! Kittyland!
Ellis can also be heard saying,
I want to ride one. Just let me ride the Screaming Oak once. Man, when are we ever going to be here again?
Ellis acting like a complete 5-year-old throughout this campaign is one of the best parts about Dark Carnival, and we're not even close to done when it comes to the funny and interesting dialogue bits. At the end of Chapter 2, the survivors come across a carousel, and sometimes you'll get this line from Nick.
A fenced-in carousel? Is this where they took child prisoners on day trips?
After turning off the carousel, the survivors arrive at the Tunnel of Love, which comes with a ton of hilarious dialogue interactions.
Bringing back any memories, Coach? You, a cheeseburger, romance in the air?
Nick, I was on the football team. Coach did just fine.
Give me a ballpark on Tunnel of Love makeouts, Nick. Under 20? Under 10? 5?
Psst. Huh. Several. Easily.
Also, while fighting through the Tunnel of Love, you'll sometimes hear these rare voice lines between Rochelle, Nick, and Ellis.
Katana sword of love here.
The air duct of love.
Incendiary ammo of love here.
It's small shit like this that I absolutely love. And shortly after leaving the Tunnel of Love, the survivors are then faced with the Screaming Oak roller coaster. Turns out Ellis gets his wish of going on an amusement park ride after all, because the safe room is on the other side of the coaster. What happens next depends on the game mode you're playing. If you're playing by yourself or with 4 players, this is one of the best segments in the game. If you're playing on Versus, however, good fucking luck making it to the safe room because this specific area is a nightmare for the survivors. Any decent infected team is going to absolutely feast here, and there's also a high chance at a tank spawn near the end of the coaster. Now with all that out of the way, let's move on to Chapter 4. I think this is a good time to mention a few Easter eggs that can be found throughout this campaign. Carnivals are full of games, of course, and in Left 4 Dead 2 you can actually play some of these games yourself, which include a shooting game in Chapter 2 which rewards you with the infamous gnome. Chapter 4 has 2 minigames that both reward you with achievements. The first one is shortly after leaving the safe room, right in front of the bumper cars. After equipping a melee weapon, pop an adrenaline shot and smack away. The bell will fly off, however, and alert a horde, so do keep that in mind. The second minigame can be seen shortly after. In this minigame, you have to smack Mustachio as he pops up. A melee weapon works, but you can also just shoot him to make it easier. After reaching a score of 42, the machine breaks and you're rewarded with the achievement. Once again, this summons a horde, so use with caution. Another thing that should be noted is the high score of 42, which is likely a reference to the numbers 4 and 2 seen in Left 4 Dead's title. Before we move on to the finale, here's a little fun fact. Apparently, Dark Carnival was supposed to have a barricade somewhere because Nick has a voice line that goes like this.
We're gonna have to destroy this rubble pile.
And upon checking the wiki, I found this. Turns out there was also a different plan for the finale involving a monorail. To quote the wiki, it was planned as a monorail. The survivors were to climb to a roof and jump atop the monorail from there. There was also a plan to have a barricade somewhere in the map, but the idea was scrapped. And if you guys recall the intro cinematic of Left 4 Dead 2, you can see Nick climbing atop the Screaming Oak while it's erupted in flames. This obviously doesn't happen in the Dark Carnival campaign, but maybe this was an idea during the early stages of Left 4 Dead 2's development. Now, with all that in mind, let's move on to the finale. Before we even leave the safe room, we have a ton of wall graffiti to break down here, and it sheds some light on what happened at the carnival during the early stages of the outbreak. Why are we still here? Not enough buses. Not enough sense. They're trying to save us, and they're not. CETA sucks. 10 plus rep. And if you check the other side of the safe room, we also have this. Midnight Riders, rest in peace. We are gonna miss you, Riders. Best band in the world. The Riders got me through some rough times. They will be missed. The Riders are okay. They got choppered out last night. Probably heading off to play at the mall opening. Coward bastards. Must be nice to have enough money to buy a helicopter. We wait around for weeks while they skip to the front of the line. Assholes. Now there is a lot of interesting shit to break down here. Let's start by quickly revisiting this line of text. We wait around for weeks while they skip to the front of the line. This is very oddly similar to another wall of text found in Chapter 2 of the Parish, which goes exactly like this. I've been here for a week and they're shipping out people that just got here. Those are carriers. Good riddance. The only good carrier is a dead carrier. Now, let's recap what we know for sure. There was a large group of survivors at the stadium waiting for evacuation. The Midnight Riders were present at the stadium, and according to this wall of text, all of them left in a helicopter, while other survivors who have been there for weeks were left behind. And finally, we've seen survivors getting split up and divided like this before. Considering the evidence, it's very likely that the Midnight Riders are in fact carriers. But if this is true, why weren't they executed? Why were they put in a helicopter while all the other survivors were left behind? If you watched my video on the Parish, I talked about the military executing large carrier groups in New Orleans, which is not only heavily implied, it's all but confirmed at this point. But if my theory is correct and the Midnight Riders are in fact carriers, then why weren't they executed like the carriers found in New Orleans? Maybe they were taken in for testing, maybe they were taken to the Caribbean to join the carrier ranks, or maybe I have this whole thing backwards and the survivors left behind in the stadium are in fact the carriers, and leaving them behind was perhaps a tactical decision by the military. Maybe Valve planned on the Midnight Riders being the playable characters of Left 4 Dead 3. Most of this is complete speculation, so I don't know. If you guys have anything to add, be sure to let me know because once again, this is a very interesting rabbit hole. But before we move on, there's one more thing that should be noted, and yes, my deepest apologies for not pointing this out in the passing video. In Chapter 2 of the Passing, there's an Easter egg where you can briefly see the Midnight Riders tour bus driving by, meaning yes, it's very likely that the Midnight Riders are still alive. Now with all that said, let's move on to the finale. This time around, it's Coach who comes up with the brilliant idea.
Y'all know the Midnight Riders? They gonna save us. We start their finale, that chopper's gonna know something's up because nobody, and I mean nobody, has a bigger pyrotechnics show than the Midnight Riders.
Coach, you are a brilliant man.
Here are some things people may not know about the finale. If you walk up to the microphone on the stage, it actually works, and will amplify the characters' voices. Coach and Ellis will take this opportunity to sing random lyrics from a Midnight Rider song, but the player can also use this as an opportunity to annoy the ever-living shit out of your teammates by spamming a vocalizer into the microphone. The finale of Dark Carnival, at least in single player, is one of my favorite finales. A Midnight Rider song playing in the background while fighting the infected hordes is a very badass and entertaining finale. It sucks in verses due to the vast empty spaces which lead to minimal spawn opportunities, but still, this finale is an absolute blast. After a few minutes of fighting off the infected hordes, the helicopter arrives and rescues our crew from the carnival, until he inevitably crashes into a swamp, but that's a topic for a different day. That concludes the story behind Dark Carnival. I want to thank everyone who voted on the recent poll, and I wanted to thank all of you in general. The Left 4 Dead videos have been doing amazing on my channel, the comments, the support, it means more than you know, and I'll be forever grateful. But enough with the peachy bullshit. I will be doing another community poll where you guys are going to vote on the next campaign for me to break down, but until then you guys know the drill. If I missed anything, be sure to let me know down below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.